Hello, this is Ivalam Cook Solis, and welcome to another episode of Power Apps in Higher Ed or Power Platform in Higher Ed. Whatever I build here, I have built it inspired by a problem I am trying to solve or a solution I'm trying to develop for a higher ed application. But whatever I do, I am sure 100%, 110% that you can find applications almost anywhere else. So don't let the title distract you from the learning. This is the hashtag under which I organized all my content. And if you like what I'm doing, please subscribe to get notifications and follow my channel and leave me comments if you would like to. So in today's episode, I'm going to be working on how to develop a specific control or component that helps users identify where to find themselves on a specific multitask set of actions that they need to carry out. In my case, it's students who are taking a course on how to develop products, and they're using Power Apps as part of their hands-on experience. But you could apply this to almost any kind of business business application that you can think of. This sort of so that's a problem I'm going to be dealing with. The things behind the scenes is to take advantage of doing a comparison between old-fashioned controls and new the modern controls that are being released and to show some of the things you can do the old way, some of the things you can do the new way, and to take even some learning opportunities in terms of responsiveness and so forth that you can apply here. So we're going to get into all that, but first, here's my intro. So here's the problem we're going to be working with. I always like starting with that, right? The problem is that we want to provide our users with some kind of visual representation of their progress as part of a multi-part process that they're engaged in. And an example, the example I'm going to be dealing with is when I work with my students and I teach them uh, product development and app development, we break it down into smaller components that then they submit some kind of artifact for. And once that gets approved, they get a visual update on their app to let them know how far they have progressed. So the solution for the problem I just stated is to use a progress bar to graphically indicate the progress towards a maximum possible score. In other words, the highest score they can get in the class. The old way of doing this without the modern controls would have been, in my case, to create a gallery and then to add rectangle. That gallery would contain the student names and the points, but then add a rectangle under each student name and make that rectangle on one hand the representation of the highest possible points and make that fill of that rectangle gray. So in other words, the width of the rectangle is equivalent to some representation of that maximum number of points. On top of that, we want to overlay a maroon rectangle that is aligned with the gray rectangle, and its width is determined by how many points the individual has completed up to now. And then as a bonus, we want to add actually a couple of things. One that I didn't add in this slide, but it is we're going to have a little triangle, like a little pointer that is aligned with the progress bar, and it's going to need to move as the progress bar gets wider. So we're going to make it a relative position based on the width of the progress bar. Let's take a look at how that looks on an application that I've used in my classes. So here's the fictitious class, which is product Design and Pitch 202. It's taught fall semester and it's welcoming the current user, me. And here we have in this gallery a representation of four students that are part of the course and the, their progress towards completing all of their uh, components that they need to add. So this student here has 168 points, almost done. This other one, 151, and so forth. So you can see how the different pieces, this bar adjusts based on number of points, and this little triangle travels with that. The way they engage in this particular case is there's a gallery here with the different pieces they need to complete. They get a check mark for the things they've already submitted, and here's a point value for that. And whenever they submit it, they can see whether or not that was approved, because if something is not approved, it will not have a check mark. And it also reminds them here, again with another progress bar, where they are in the whole process. I'm going to simplify this for you so that we can actually focus on the actual learning and the critical pieces for this project. So in the original structure, the one I showed you the example for, we have the data, two data sources. One source that the students interact with via a form that is a SharePoint list that contains the tasks, their descriptions, and their point value. And the students use a form to submit evidence that they have completed their work, and that gets written to another data source, which contains the student name, the task, and the earned points once those get approved by the instructor. In this case, we're going to simplify it because the important thing is the different ways to build the progress bars and how we add points to it and demonstrate progress. So we're going to rely just on one data source, which is a SharePoint list. And that SharePoint list has the student first name, last name, how many points they have earned. That is going to be represented in a gallery that shows the student name with a little graphical thing there. It shows a star with the number of points they have. And in this case, rather than having to go through the whole submission of evidence and so forth, we're just going to simulate that whole process into a single interaction, which is an icon there. And when somebody clicks on that, it will patch the data source by adding 7 points. So we can just see that value change. Let's go ahead and take a look at how we build this. I have a pre-cooked representation of what that will look like. So if you see here, we have the gallery, we have some image, which obviously we could personalize with individual images, number of points, and their progress. So I've also added, in this case, a profile graphic that is used here and a data source, which is that SharePoint list. Let's go and build this from the ground up. So here I have screen one. The first thing I'm going to do, even before I start building here, I'm going to set the maximum number of points that the student can accumulate as they complete the whole set of assignments. I can do this in two places. I can set a variable when the screen becomes visible, or I can set a variable when the app starts. Go ahead and do it on the app on start. We're going to set a variable when the screen loads called total points, our total points to 115. So that's the most they can accumulate as part of the course. We could also do this by doing some kind of lookup into another data source, but this is easy for demonstration. And we want to make sure that we run the app on start So that variable is actually in memory. Okay, so here we go. We're gonna start with the easy part. I prefer to start with a blank vertical gallery. So I'm gonna throw that in and we're gonna put it there. One of the first things I do is I change I disable the scroll bar and I enable navigation. It's a matter of preference, but I like the way that works. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set up my template fill to light gray so I can see the space where I'm working. And then I'm going to start throwing things in here. I'm going to go ahead and add an image and set its value in this particular case to profile, which I misspelled. And I'm going to adjust the height to 55 and 55. Okay. Then I'm going to do a couple of labels. So I forgot to connect this, there we go, to my data source. Now we have it connected to the data source is something I hadn't done before. I forgot to do that. Okay, so let's try this again. Let's add a label. And we are going to use first item, actually last name. And then we're going to add first name in the same label with a comma. There we go. We have last name, first name separated with a comma. But I'm going to align that to the bottom of that. And you know, there's so much room down here. I'm going to go ahead and just do an auto height. That doesn't seem to waste as much space. Then I'm going to add a second label. Also going to do auto height. And for this, I want to do the points. Points scored. But I want to make it look nicer. So here's a little bit of a bonus activity for you. I'm going to go home. I'm going to do, and then in the middle here, I'm going to do Windows, Windows Start. I'm going to choose the start emoji to fit that in and a space. And then at the end, points. That makes it look a lot nicer. So quickly, we have here now in our gallery the number of points, the names, and a little picture of them. So we know that we probably don't need all this space, so we can bring this up. Nice. Now, before we go much further, the other thing I want to do is actually sort this, showing the highest scoring student at the top. So I'm going to choose my items, and I'm going to say sort, and our data source by point score, and I want that sort to be descending, so highest scoring student. Kind of gamifying this shows up at the top, right? One last thing I want to add, well, no, not one last thing, a couple of things I want to add here. I want to add a way that allows us to rack up points. So let's say the student is going to upload a document to prove that they have completed the assignment. And going to set that up there. And on select, then we're going to patch our data source. What are we patching? This item. And what part of how are we patching this item? We are going to make the point scored, in this particular case, equals to whatever this item. So we're going to make it equal to whatever this item point scored currently is, plus 7. Okay, so here's our patch statement. We're patching our data source, what item, the item currently being interacted with, what field, point scored, and that's, we're going to make it whatever the current value of point scored is, plus 7. So let's take a look. So in the case of Jane, this should add 27. So Jane has 27, and she actually has moved 1 scale up. So the patching part is working. Now let's dig quickly into how we create those progress bars. I'm going to add a rectangle here. And the first thing I'm going to set is its height. I'm going to set that to 5. The next thing is I want to position this, and I could position it fairly easily by just dragging it, but I want to preserve some kind of alignment in case I resize any of these pieces. So if I make this, if I move the name, for example, or something like that. So first I want to align the x coordinate of that rectangle to the name above it. So we know that this name is called currently label 3. Should probably rename that and call it LBL name. Makes it easier to remember. So while we're doing that, we should also rename that rectangle. Gonna make this rectangle RCT. And this is gonna be our maximum number of points rectangle. So for that rectangle, I want its x coordinates to actually match the name x coordinates. And you can see here, it's indicating with the green rectangle that it's referring to this, plus it's aligned it there. So if I move the name over, you can see the rectangle moves with it. All right. Now I want to align the rectangle's y coordinate, in other words, on the vertical axis, to place it under the name. So again, I'm going to do this LPL dot y, but notice that it's sitting at the top because the y coordinates of control are always associated with its top left corner. So I need to add to it its height. And there we go. Now they're sitting right underneath and aligned to that side. Finally, I want to change the width. And the width for this is going to be our var total points. But notice that the var total points is rather short. I wanted to make it a little bit bigger. So I'm going to multiply that by 3. So this also means that any points that I score, I need to multiply those by 3. Let me take my face out because I tend to touch my nose and other things, my beard and whatnot. So that could be distracting. Okay, I'm going to make this white. Make that color white. So you can see it there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy that, make sure I'm editing the template, and I'm going to paste it there. And you notice that it's pasted exactly on the same spot as the other one because we copied everything, all the coordinates, width, etc. from rectangle max points. We need to rename this and we're going to call it RCT point scored. RCT point scored. And I'm going to make its color maroon. We don't have any border, so we don't need to worry about that. The other thing we're going to do now is change its width. And for that, we're going to make that dependent not on the total points scored, but on this item point scored. Remember, we multiplied the bar behind it by 3, so we're going to multiply this by 3. There we go. So quickly, we have a way to see all these different bars matching the points scored by the student. I want to do one more thing, and that is the triangle thing, because there's some nifty things about it. So again, we're going to edit this, and we're going to look for a triangle. And we want to use this triangle. I also use this one, but I'm going to use this one. I'm going to throw it in there. And then I'm going to adjust its width and height. So here in the height section, and I'm going to make this an even number. So in this case, I'm going to use 8 times 8, and you will see why momentarily. I'm going to make the fill same color. There we go. All right. So I could just manually, let's zoom in here. Could just manually grab this and say, hey, let's put it there. It's not quite where it needs to be. And that triangle, TRG, is, I call it pointer. Okay, this triangle pointer, what we're trying to do is actually match its little top here with this edge. So two things we need to do. Again, play with XY. First, for its Y properties, we want it to match the rectangle point score dot Y. Then, so you can see here, it's sitting again aligned with the top. We want to add the rectangle point score dot height. So far, it's aligned with the bottom, which is great. Next thing, we wanted to dynamically align with the edge of this rectangle, right? So let's see, that's our x coordinates. And so for that, we want it to be aligned with the rectangle point scored on its x coordinates plus the rectangle point scored width. Still not quite. Again, why? Because it's aligning this little edge here at the bottom. But because this is a total of 8 and the tip sits in the middle, we can subtract 4 and that gives us the perfect alignment. So let's take a look to see if this whole thing is working the way we want it to work. So we're gonna add, let's see here with Jane Doe. She's gonna submit one more assignment, and after it's approved, she should have 34 points, sorry. And you saw the little arrow move. We're gonna do it again. She's gonna move up because we're sorting, and the arrow is gonna move a little bit more. There we go. And all the arrows are keeping their relative position, and this is getting sorted appropriately. Okay. Now, let's see how we do that with modern controls. To show you how to enable it, you basically go to your settings, you look at upcoming features, and look for modern controls, and you can enable them there. Mine were already enabled, but that's where you do it. Okay. So, yes, I'm loose with my language and call controls components and so forth, but important thing is you get things done. So this is going to be a little bit quicker. I'm basically going to take this gallery, I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to paste it there. So we have the basic building blocks already in place. Things I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the on the new gallery, sorry, I'm going to remove the pointer, rectangle, and maximum number of points. And I'm probably going to generate some errors there, so let's take a look. Nope, it all went pretty easily. Okay, so let's see how we do that with a modern control. So I'm going to grab the progress bar, drop it in here. You can see progress bar is there. Let's take a quick look at its properties. Okay, progress bars, modern controls have a lot fewer properties than we can see in some of the other things. So here we have choice of medium or large thickness. There is no small. I don't know why, but there isn't. Then we have the shape. It can either be rounded or square. So it's kind of cool to have a rounded shape. Looks modern. Then colors, we only have success, just green, warning, just red, and error, just a deeper red. Not much of a choice there, right? All right, and then position, similar to the other ones. So I'm gonna do size the same way we did size with the previous one, with the other example. So we're gonna do this again as var total points times 3. There we go. We're gonna assign the value here. It's gonna be super easy because all we have to do is this item point scored. That's it. Super easily done. Nothing to worry about. That's all there is to it. Yes, you can still do the XY alignment. I'm not going to go into that, but you know, that's fairly easily done. But the other thing I wanted to show you, which we can do on both sides, but we'll see the differences between one and the other, is this. Let's say we want to create a better experience for our users and have the color of the bar change depending on how many points they have scored. The passing score for this class is 51% off the total points possible, which, if you recall from if we recall from our app, is set at 115. Okay, so here we could do this. We can take that control, and for its color, we can do this. If, I'm gonna expand this a little, this item point scored is less than total points times 0.51, in other words, that is not passing, then and set the progress bar color to warning. Otherwise, set the progress bar color to success. So if we look at these, then we see that Sarah Taylor, Ashley, Daniel, James, and David have all more than 51%, but that all these students here are getting a warning because their scores are below the 51%. I could do a very fine-grained process for this, but it's kind of limited. I can do a little bit more finer grain there with this one. So here I could play with a whole spectrum of things. I can say if this item total point score is less than 33%, show them a red bright warning. If they're anywhere between 33% and 50, less than 51%, in other words, 50, just give them a yellow. And then if they're above the 51%, let's give them a green. So let's see these things in action. Let's take here, Michael is, and we'll see it here also. Michael Johnson is currently at 37 points. He submits one more piece of homework. Now he moved 44%, and now he's in the yellow. And over here, if we look at Michael, we don't have as much information. We cannot provide as rich an experience. Similarly here with Jessica. Now Jessica has got 42. She's in the yellow section. And then Emily still has a lot of work to do. Here we only see greens or reds. There are some ways in which you could do this if you wanted to set, for example, your brand color. Let's take a look at the moment. One of the things you may have noticed with these guys, if you choose this, there's another color called brand. And that brand color is related to whatever you choose here, but you only have blues. So you could make that your third option if you wanted to. I don't like it. I would like to see a whole lot more variability in this. So with this, that's all you need to do to get some progress bars added to your user experience for this multi-part completion by either you or multiple users or whatever else. If I had to choose at this point, if I am teaching this, there are certain advantages to teach people how to do it with the rectangles, the old controls, because they can work a little a lot more math into the process, which always helps our students. If I wanted a quick and dirty and easy to maintain piece, definitely the modern controls have an edge over that. So, no doubt, for ease of use and faster implementation, I would go with the modern controls. So I hope you like this video. Uh, it's been really fun to get it done. And if you have any comments, if you have any questions, feel free to let me know. This is where you can get in touch with me. Follow me on LinkedIn and on X, also known as Twitter. Uh, Leave me a comment, subscribe, and until next time, thanks.